Now, coming down to a couple of other segments, mobile data, I remember your CFO talking about an inflection point. I look at the demography of the country, very young population. What is happening there? Because, that really, for me, is the most exciting part of the story. The information century, people using it for a mobile wallet, internet, sending payments across M-Pesa. What's happening in that space, Bob?
But the internet is one of the most exciting things that, as a human race, we've faced for some time. We were a little bit lazy for a little bit too long. When I first took the reins, I remember Michael saying to me, what we have to drive now is mobile data. And I think we were a bit slow in picking that one up. So last year, mobile data grew by 43%, something like that.
Yes.
And we were pretty pleased with that, because that was kind of the first time we started to see that inflection point. But actually, when we looked at some of our partner networks, when we looked at the South Africans, for example.
This is Vodacom.
We realized that actually our performance wasn't that good.
Yes. But were they starting from the same level as you were?
No, they started earlier, but they were still seeing year-on-year growth, which was higher than 43%. And so as a team, we kind of went back to it and said, no, guys, we're being a little bit lazy. And so we're pushing much harder on mobile data this year. The half-year results will be announced in about 6 weeks' time, and so you'll see how that's panning out. But the real things which are driving that is smartphones. So if you go into one of our Safaricom shops, you'll see that we only sell smartphones. We don't sell any ordinary, all the days of the Kamamba is gone, right?
Yes.
Currently, we're running a fantastic promotion with Samsung, for example.
Yes.
That's helping to drive smartphone take up. And we find that once you move someone, even from a feature phone, and a feature phone would be like a BlackBerry.
Yes.
Even moving them from a feature phone to a smartphone, the average revenue generated by that customer can multiply by as much as 4 times.
Is that right?
Yeah. Because once you've got a smartphone,
because you're being more compulsive.
Much more utility. You want to check the weather. You want to check. You will be checking share prices constantly.
Yes. I do.
Even if you're sitting, sometimes you're sitting in the cafe and you hear a piece of music and think, what is that? And then you go into SoundHound. And so there's a lot more utility, and young people are using it a lot. But we mustn't forget what I think in the UK we used to call the silver surfers. So people with silver hair who've got a lot of time, who are kind of surfing the net.
Is that what's playing out here as well?
Not so much as silver.
I was wondering.
It's not so much the silver surfer yet. It is very much the young people, and it's very much people around social media, which is common, I think, across the world. So Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all those things, YouTube. User-generated content is also a big thing. You don't need to pump, pass editions of Friends and stuff like that. People don't really want to watch that. They want to watch stuff which is very relevant to them in the local market.
And I was thinking about this. If you haven't experienced a smartphone, how do you know what that experience is? How do you know what you're missing? Isn't that a complexity when you're in a market such as this, that people are used to, a speed of internet, they don't realize this could be 20 times faster? How do you get them? I did.
Yes, it is. One of my favorite nominated senators.
Yes.
A lady. And she said to me, she says, Bob, look at my phone. Look at the state of this phone. I said, you need to get a new phone. She says, but I want a phone with buttons on them. Yes. I said, Senator, it's. She says, I'm too old to do this swiping thing.
Yeah.
But she's kind of running out of time. She's going to have to move to swiping things because there are fewer and fewer.
Only BlackBerry, I think, have still got the buttons.
Yeah.
And then, people spoke a lot about a tipping point being in the price for the smartphone device, right? Saying that once you got below $100, that was a magic number. Are we seeing an acceleration in take-up? Are we at the right price point? Are you happy as a telecom operator that you've got enough offerings out there at the right price points to continue this sort of mobile data takeoff?
Yeah, so the entry-level price is now at $48. I talk dollars instead of shillings because it relates more to the price that I'm paying. So $48 is the entry-level retail price now, which is an interesting point. We finally got below 50, and I think we're one of the few markets where we're able to do that. And that's made a big difference,
Yes.
a big dent in the numbers. But I also need to be careful because the more smartphones I put on, yes, it does generate revenues, but the
Yes.
more investment I then need to put into the network to keep up.
Yes.
Because, data, I think the last reported numbers, data had grown 100% year on year.
So you're putting 100% more pressure on the network.
Correct.
And
Voice, incidentally, year on year, voice had increased by around 30% year on year.
That's
big
incredible.
increase in voice usage, not voice
Yes.
revenue, because
but
the
obviously, price per minute had come down. But
price per minute
Yeah.
has come. The blended price, as we call
Yes.
it, had come down. So that puts a lot of strain on the network, and that's why we're investing. Last year we invested 27 billion shillings.
Yes.
This year, I've got my budget meeting after this actually, but this year we are planning to invest 30 or more
Yes.
billion shillings just to keep this network up and big. And I know, we'll talk a little bit about spectrum and stuff in a
Yes.
minute, but they're all investments which you have to then pour in order to serve the smartphone market. So if you're living in Nairobi, you'd find that recently the experience has been not quite so good.
it's had drop-offs, yes.
Hopefully in the last couple of weeks you'll have started to see a little bit of a turn. And
Yeah.
the reason for that is because we've done what we call refarming of some spectrum. So the 900 megahertz of spectrum, which was
Yes.
traditionally used for 2G phones, is actually much more efficient on 3G.
Is
And
it?
so we've moved customers off the 900, 2G customers off the 900, and move the 3G customers onto 900. And so that does a couple of things. One, it gives you further reach,
Yes.
because the lower the spectrum, the further the reach. And secondly, better penetration into buildings, because your bad experience,
Is what all these buildings going up?
is in building. Well, it's partly the buildings going up and creating shadows, but it's also in building coverage. So this room is fine because you're
Yes.
surrounded by glass, but if you're in the center of the building, it becomes more difficult to penetrate that. So the 900 megahertz actually does that better. So you would have seen, and we've been doing so over the last couple of weeks, you would have seen some improvements in some parts. But it's a constant battle, and but it's a good challenge to have.
Absolutely, you've got growth, right? I mean, that's far better than not having it and managing something else. If I can now just touch on quickly message revenues, which, by the way, at the full year mark were up 34.19%. And this was in a world when everyone's talking about WhatsApp and talking about all these new instant messenger functions. How did you manage that?
Well, the penetration in smartphones helped in an odd way because we don't have quite as many smartphones, or the penetration is not quite as high as some of the more developed markets. Because in order to do WhatsApp or Viber or any of those over-the-top
Yes.
services, you need to have a smartphone. And because we don't have that, we haven't seen WhatsApp take over. That's one reason. But you and I use WhatsApp all the time.
Yes.
When I'm talking to you, I actually talk to you on WhatsApp
That's right.
over because it's kind of a bit more convenient, a bit richer. But the other reason is because our SMS pricing is actually quite low.
Yes.
And when I was in the UK the last time, I was horrified to be reminded that the price of an SMS is about 15 shillings
Per SMS?
per SMS. Whereas here, you can pay Safaricom.
I think you got bundles for 20 shillings.
We got bundles. We got bundles for 5 shillings. You pay 5 shillings and you get, you get a number of SMSs. You pay 10 shillings and you get 200 SMSs. I can't remember. So if you have 200 SMSs per day,
It's a lot of
you don't really need to do WhatsApp.